Hi, everyone. It's great to be here again in this webinar from Cambridge Finance. My name is Maria Wiedner. I am the CEO and founder of Cambridge Finance. And today we are here to talk about Excel. Excel is still a tool that is pretty much used in underwriting when we're doing investment analysis. And even though we talk a lot about AI and we talk about how to automate a lot of things. We normally start with an Excel spreadsheet because it is very much part of the underwriting process because when we're doing the investment analysis, it's always different. There's always something that is different in either the capital stack or the tenancy schedule or the way that the business plan goes. So Excel is very flexible and it's great for prototyping and it's also great for analyzing investments. So today we are here to talk about Excel and here to talk about the tenancy schedule, which is pretty much part of how we look into real estate investment. Okay, so welcome everybody, and let's get started. Okay, so let me start with my screen sharing here and with my slides that I pretty much use just so you know. So if you have done here, let me just display swap presentation here. I pretty much did this using AI. So I did put in ChatGPT, just so you know. But the main, but I'm gonna talk about like what's it didn't give me all the answers, but just so you know, and then also in terms of the slides, I also put in Gamma. So because ChatGPT will give you a set of slides, but then it doesn't come formatted, and then Gamma can help you with that. So just so you know, as a disclaimer here on the ethical use of AI, okay? So we're going to use here how to forecast a tenancy schedule in Excel, okay? AI can't do Excel well yet, so we still need to understand where it's coming from, where the numbers are coming from, but it still helps with some formulas. But what I want to show you here is pretty much the logic of writing Excel formulas, and especially for tenancy schedule. Okay, so this is pretty much a practical guide, and mainly like when we are doing the analysis. So if you're a real estate analyst, so probably something that you are familiar with or you have to be familiar with. Right. So the agenda for today is what is a tenancy schedule and why forecasted it, setting up your tenancy schedule data in Excel, forecasting rent over time, and visualizing, summarizing the forecast. And then also I'd like to talk about how we're going to augment our role as real estate investment analysts, or if you're doing like the debt underwriting, how we're going to augment our skills using AI. So I'm just going to talk about extracting lease information. Okay. And then you have Q&A if we have time, but normally it's very quick because it's only 30 minutes. So let's go. So tenancy schedule is a structured table detailing lease terms for each unit or tenant. So when we are doing the underwriting as such, when we're doing the investment analysis for a property, so normally we get a set of like the table already describing who the tenant is, when the lease started, when there's a lease event as a break or a review, and then includes the names of the tenant, the unit size, and I'm gonna show you a tenancy schedule, what it looks like, but it's pretty much the details of the lease, okay? And then because here we're looking at multi-tenant building, so that means that it's already summarized for us in terms of already in the table in terms of what is the values for the rents, what is the dates that the lease started, when it's gonna end, and there is any rent-free periods, and so on and so forth, break clauses, indexation, renewal assumptions, and so on and so forth. So is everything that it's already in the rent documentation, but it's already summarized for us. So that's the tenancy schedule. Okay. Um, Maybe I'll just give you an example here what the tenancy schedule might look like. So then you know what I'm talking about, because maybe you're going to spend 30 minutes here talking about a tenancy schedule and you don't have like in front of you, but that's pretty much what I mean in terms of tenancy schedule. Okay, so it's already summarized here who the tenant is and so this is I'm just going to find here. So pretty much like what is the unit description, the unit number, and what is important for us are the dates that the lease started, the lease when the lease is gonna end, and if you have any review assumptions, break dates from the landlord or from the tenant, FRI, so if it's a full repair insurance, and the passing rent, the current rent, and the rent per square foot, and then if it is inside or outside the act. Yeah, so that means if the tenant has the right to renew or not. Okay. Um, right. So this is the tenancy schedule. I hope it's a little bit more clear for you. Then why do we need to forecast it? So the idea of the tenancy schedule is that not only we know what's the rent that we're receiving now, but what is the forecasting it, how much we're going to receive, because this is pretty much how much we're going to price the property in case there is an income that is being produced. So therefore, we need to know when we're going to receive the monies from the rent, when there is a vacancy, for example, then there is no rent. When we're going to have a rent free, so we need to know when we're going to have income coming in. Yeah. So it's pretty much for cash flow planning. So we need to find out what is our NOI, your net operating income. From a cash perspective, you need to know because this is how much you're gonna use to pay your debt, and so on. And then for valuation, DCF modeling for valuation, for example. So if you want to do the valuation for the property based on the DCF, then it's very important that you know how to forecast the tenancy schedule. For covenant monitoring, as I mentioned, so if you're going to pay your debt, do you have enough money to pay that? And CapEx and void assumptions, when do you need to spend money for CapEx, or when you have void, for example, that if, for example, you are in a FRI lease, then it means that whatever was the tenant costs now becomes your cost, your expenses, right? And then for asset management reporting as well. So you need to know when there's going to be a rent review. So then you can talk to the tenant when you have, CapEx to be done. So therefore you need to know what is your tenancy schedule like, so you can forecast it for asset management purposes. Okay. So that's the idea of forecasting. That's why it's so important. And then typical tenancy data table, as I showed you. When we are modeling Excel, so there is a function here to model, to use this tenancy schedule and export this as a table. I'm going to show you how this is done. From a modeling perspective, from an Excel perspective, um, I really don't like to set this tenancy schedule as a table, and I'll explain to you why that is the case. But it's pretty much because the formulas can become a little bit bigger than if you just put the name of the cell, because instead of saying cell B1, then it becomes table, tenancy schedule, and column Y and row something. So that's the only reason, right? But otherwise, creating tables tend to be efficient when we are using Excel for mainly data analysis, which is not really the case for forecasting tenancy schedule. But nevertheless, this is something that can be done, but you have my view here. Um, Format dates and currency properly. Yeah, dates is one thing that if you're going to forecast with any cash flows, dates is always the problem. We always call it the dating problem. So you need to be aware of that, how we're going to deal with the data, and then add data validation for drop downs. So that's pretty much, for example, if you're going to assume a break or not, I'll show you my tenancy schedule, then it's important to add this data validation because we are going to add this, for example, Y for yes, I'm going to break, I'm going to assume the break. In your formulas, that becomes a little bit hard coded. And then this can have a problem if somebody, for example, instead of just typing Y, which is what is written in your formula, types it, for example, yes. So then yes, the formula doesn't understand, and therefore your formula is not going to be right, your forecast is not going to be right. So data validation is an important feature in Excel. So then you can constrain the data input when we are doing the manipulation of the data. Okay, so I hope that's fine with you. Preparing the timeline. So also, as I mentioned, this is very important, the timeline, because we are dealing with data sets that have dates, and then it's always complicated to deal with dates when we are working in Excel. So one of the functions that is helpful when doing this timeline is the EO month, end of the month. Yeah, my joke is always that there is a T missing there because it's end of month, not end of the month, but you know what I mean. So it's pretty much because dates can end on the 30th or 31st. And then this is one thing that we need to be aware of. And then use row as your forecast time frame. This is how I've seen people using vertically as well, but I normally use the time going across to the right. So it's a line horizontal axis for me for the time. Okay. Right. So if you have, as always, if you have any questions, please send the question on the QA box. Even if I can't answer them now, I'm sure I'm gonna reach out to you later for that. So the rent calculation logic is pretty much showing like what is the end date and the start date, and then you divide this number by 360 times the rent. So that's normally how that's pretty much what it is there to do. However, we need to look at the lease event. So rent, when the rent starts, what the rent reviews and renewals, the breaks, expires, and all the lease events need to be incorporated into this forecast, because it's not just the rent that you receive now until they expire, and then after the expire becomes zero. So it's not like this. So when we are modeling tenancy schedules, what we are modeling are actually like the contracts and when you're gonna see the rents being changed, and therefore this becomes a little bit more complex. And then for the adding these events, so then the functions that I use, so there are many ways. If you're familiar with Excel, you know that there are many ways to get to the same answer, but the way I'm using now is the days 360 in the sense that you can apportion rents. Okay, there are different ways. So if you have come to my course, there's also the way that you approximate to the nearest quarter. But then in this webinar here, what I'm doing is that I'm apportioning the rent. So if, for example, I'm using a quarterly cash flow, so then like from the 1st of January until the 30th of 31st of March. If your lease started on the 15th of February, then it's a portion. So it doesn't take into consideration the whole rent. Okay, so that's the idea now with apportioning. So that's why I use the days 360 and then the max and mean for the lease start. But I'll show you, this is what the webinar is about. So I'm gonna show you how to do this forecast in Excel. Okay, so let's start there with the demo on how to do this tenancy schedule in Excel. So I didn't put all this tenancy schedule there, so I'm just using like a dummy kind of tenancy schedule, okay? Because the idea is that I want to show you how you then will you receive this PDF, and then how you're going to make it, how are you going to parse it, they call it, into Excel, right? And then, here we only have, say, 8 tenants, but then, if you're looking at this building here, you have a lot more. And then this building, if you also have like other buildings nearby, so you can model everything here in one cash flow. So that's what I wanted to show you as well. So we're going to start here with kind of like a dummy cash flow, the dummy tenancy schedule. Okay, but it's the inputs should always be the same. Okay, so here we have, for example, the miles that we call. So what is the unit, and then the use, if it is an office, or it can be retail in this case, it can be hospitality like restaurant, the name of the tenant, the area, the rent per square foot. Copilot always wants to talk to me, but I don't want you now. And then the rent here, the total rent, and then the ERV is important input here, right? Because normally with the tenancy schedule that you get will not come with an ERV unless the rent started just on that day. So you need to have this input ready there, like what do you think is the ERV per square foot? So then you can calculate the total ERV. Also, it's important to take into consideration the discount to ERV. So here I'm just putting a kind of discount to ERV. Sometimes you can calculate a little bit more granularly with a net present value, but in this case, I'm just using a 15% discount to ERV. And then you have here the lease start. So all these leases start in 2019. And then they're going to expire in 34. And then there's going to be a rent reviews in 29. And then as you can see, there are review cycles of 5 years. Upwards only. So that's also can be an upwards only rent. So the rents can't go down. So if you are outside the UK, in the UK rents, we have this clause, the rents can't go down. And then break date. So if there is a break date there, so what's going to happen? And then assume the break no. And then we need to make assumptions again, the same as the ERV. We need to make assumptions for refurbishment cost per square foot. So for example, if this is a multi-tenant, if the tenant goes, what is going to be the CapEx that you're going to do? So therefore, you need to make this assumption, and then how long this refurbishment is going to take. So 3 months, 6 months, 1 year. The model is flexible enough should be flexible enough to deal with it. My model is certainly. And then also the void cost. So if you're not doing CapEx, what is it going to be? The void costs, for example, if the unit is just empty. And again, this is assuming that is an FRR lease, in that you will have to pay this void costs. Well, if it is void, you have to pay anyways. And then you're going to have assumptions for the voids. So 12 months, can be 13 months. It can be, so this model is flexible enough to deal with any ways of your assumption. It can be 13 months. It doesn't need to be exactly quarter. And then the rent-free period as well, how many months you think you're gonna is gonna be your rent-free assumption. Okay, so this is the tenancy schedule. So these are the inputs that you need. So in my model here, everything I'm doing is in the inputs are in blue. Okay, if you don't like the blue, you can always press F5 and then special. And then you can change here to constants, and then you can see what are the where the inputs are. So these are the inputs. So then you can change here, for example, if you want the input from Excel, then you can change here to the input cell style. Okay, but just so you know how I got to the blue numbers, which are the hard-coded numbers, okay, your inputs. Right, so here is the meat of this webinar. It's just taking me a little while, but the idea here is that, so this is your tenancy schedule. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna start with the lease start. Okay, so the lease start is the one that you get from your tenancy schedule, and then you're gonna have here the lease end. Okay, so here the lease end, so that's why it's important here to add this data validations, because if you look at this formula here, I'm just gonna scroll and zoom in a little bit so you can see. So if you look at this formula here, there is an N here for if Q at 40 equals N. So that means that if there is, assume no break, yeah, so the N is a little bit hard coding. So if anybody's in QN, which is assume break or not, this column here, Q, if they type in no, then your formula will not work, right? So that's why this data validation, this drop down box here is important. So that's if you type in no, for example, then Excel says no, computer says no. So that's the idea of data validation. Okay, and then you have here the lease end. So because we're not breaking, then it's the lease end as in the expiry, so the 34. And then you have here the passing rent. So the passing rent is pretty much how what you're receiving, the current rent at this time. Okay, so the idea is to start with, all what I want to do is model from the start until the end what is going to be this passing rent. Okay, so that's just one of the steps in order to forecast. But once you understand the logic, adding the lease events, the reviews, the expiries, or the void periods, the logic is always the same, because the idea is there's going to be start of the rent and an end of the rent. Okay, so I'm just going to start here with the lease start, so which is the lease started in 2019 and is going to end in 2034. Okay, so if I put this in somehow, let me just see here if I have, just drawing a little bit here. I'm not going to ask Copilot to add this, but so if you have here a timeline here, so all I'm doing is here, say, okay, there is a start here, and then there's going to be an end here, and then this should be my cash flow with the passing. Okay, and then afterwards, what we're going to do, okay, there is a review here, so then we're going to add the froth. So it might be another review here, and then we're going to add another froth, for example, until the end. And then afterwards here, there's going to be a void, which equals 0 rent. Okay, so what I'm trying to do now is just modeling the passing rent here. Okay, because the logic for everything else is the same. So what is the logic here? So the logic here, if you think about, you're starting today, and then your first period here is the 30th of June. So all what you need to do is say, okay, what is the rent? So the end of the period is the 30th of June minus the 6th of May. And then because of BODMAS, we need to close the brackets here. Divide this by 360 times the passing rent, right? So in theory, this is all what you need to do. And then you're going to drag this all the way to the right. Oops, I forgot to fix here. So the only thing we need to fix here, the rent. So I'm just going to put here a $sign, and then there you go. Okay, so that means that this is going to be the first forecast. So the beginning of the period minus the end of the period, the end of the period minus the beginning of the period, divided by 360 times the rent. Great. So the first problem here is that we have rents, they are not all the same. So this is the installments are all different days in each quarter. We don't like that, because when we pay rents, we pay the same rent every month. So the idea is to use the days 360 that I mentioned, and then with the days 360, what Excel wants a start date and an end date and a method. So the start date now is the start of your period, comma, the end of the period. But what it's doing is just like subtracting one minus the other. There is this thing here called false and true. So false is for the US and true is for the European. We use true because the true is the 33-6 method. So it's assuming that there are 30 days in each month, whereas the US method, if it's February, is gonna count 28 days or 29 days. So there you go. So in this case, so if you use the days 360, all we need to do is copy to the right, and then you're gonna see that all your rents are now uniform, which is what we wanted to see. Great. Now, what is the next step? The next step is saying, okay, that's great, Excel. Everything is working. So I'm apportioning here because the 6th of May. But what happens if my lease, instead of starting on the 27th of September 2019, for example, is a vacant unit, is going to start 1 year from now. So it's going to be the 6th of May 2026. So then what happens here? Well, then this formula doesn't work. Why? Because this is showing me rents when in fact what is happening here is that you have a vacant unit. So in fact, this should be 0, right? But you can't just type it 0 because that's hard coding and you can't do financial model like this. So what we do here is that your start date is not going to be the start of your period. The start of your rent is going to be what? The lease start. Yeah, so instead of starting on this period, the rent's going to start on the lease start. But now that you have the 2 dates there and you want the later date, we need to use the max function. So we use the max function here. And then what we need to do here is say, okay, that's the max function. Great. But it gives me a negative number. Can rents be negative? Not really, right? So therefore, what we need to do is we need to make a max of the date and 0. So then it doesn't give me a negative number. So if it is a negative number, it's going to give you a 0 because the max of a negative number and 0 is 0. And then if you fix here the cell on the left, so I'm just going to use the F4 now, the lease start C40, and then this should work. So let me see if it works. Fingers crossed. Now the proof of the pudding in any financial modeling is copying to the right. So there you go. So now, yes, it worked. How it worked? Because my rent now is starting only on the 6th of May 2026. So there is a portioning here and everything is to the right. Okay, so there is more to do here. So for example, adding the lease end, but I won't have time to cover it. So maybe for the next webinar, I will show you the whole formula. But if you're interested, the only thing you need to do is add the mean. Maybe I'll just add the mean here. So if there is a lease end here, all what you do, because you add the max for the start, you can add a mean to the end. So it's going to be the mean of the lease event, comma, and then the lease end date, and then close brackets here, and then make sure that you fix the lease end date, and you control right. And then as you control to the right, you're going to see that your lease stops in 34 when you have the lease break. Not the lease break, the lease end date. Yeah, the expire. And if you want to break, for example, the rent, so you're going to break the lease, then this lease end date here, lease break, assume break, yes. So then the lease end becomes 27th of September 31. And then what you should see here is that you're not going to have rents again on the 31st, on the year 31. So there you go. It worked here. Okay, so that's how you do the forecasting of the passing rent with a break or with an expiry in for your tenancy schedule. Okay, so let me continue. So that in the lease event, so it's the max and the mean. And then for the lease abstraction, what I would say is that if you have a table, as we did here, right? Put this in ChatGPT, doesn't yield the best solution. Like you don't put an image in there. All what you need to do here is that what you can do is link this table in Excel. Okay, so it's just like some tricks here. So just link here. Oh, where are you? So what you do here is that you're gonna have a sheet here, and then you're gonna go data, and then you can do here get data from file, and then you can add from PDF, and then you scroll to the page where this PDF lives. Is not finding it now, but you find the page, the data, and then you download it, and then it will come back. It will come as a table, okay? It will come like this, but in Excel. Right, so I am overrunning, so I do apologize. And if you are interested in finding out more and maybe going to a slower pace, then I do run financial modeling courses in Excel. Okay, I also run AI courses, but the next course on financial modeling is going to be in 10 days time. So on the 15th, we're going to start with introduction to real estate development, investment, and finance. And then we're going to have, the value add and development financial modeling. And we're going to have investment and debt structures. So what I showed you is now is what we go through on the 21st of not October or May, and it's all May here, and the 22nd is when you add the gearing, the debt on it, and then if you attend the 15th until the 23rd, then this becomes the certificate in real estate development and value add financial modeling. Okay, and if you want to attend, you have watched this webinar, then you can get 10% discount if you write down now. It's a CF webinar 10 promo code. Okay, and then you can join us on the course, and it'll be great to teach you more about Excel, how to make this logic work, and share my knowledge with you. Okay, so again, if you have any questions, please do put them on the QA box. Let me just see where they are. Otherwise, I don't see anything. But otherwise, it'll be great to see you. Okay, so thank you so much for attending, and I hope I'll see you soon. Thank you. And I'll stop recording.